The ocean floor is the world's greatest unsolved mystery. Beneath the waves lies an entire forgotten history, a realm of lost cities and impossible artifacts that defy everything we think we know. By the end of this journey, you will have explored 25 of the most baffling enigmas ever pulled from the deep, each one a piece of a puzzle that could rewrite our past. What if a pyramid older than recorded time is sitting off the coast of Japan? And how could a complex computer from ancient Greece end up at the bottom of the sea? We are about to descend into the abyss where history is written not in stone, but in silt and shadow. What forgotten world would you most want to see revealed from the depths? Our journey begins in the crystal-clear waters off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island. In the late 1980s, a local diver stumbled upon something that should not have been there. Resting on the seabed 25 meters below the surface lies a colossal structure. It is a series of massive, flat terraces with sharp 90-degree angles and perfectly straight edges that stretch for hundreds of feet. You can see what look like wide staircases climbing its sides, giant platforms, and even pillars. From above, the entire formation resembles a stepped pyramid or the ruins of a vast ceremonial complex, silently drowned by the sea. The sheer scale and geometry of the Yonaguni monument is what first stops you. This is not a pile of rocks. It looks designed, it looks intentional, and according to some researchers, it could be over 10,000 years old, a relic from a time when sea levels were dramatically lower and this site was dry land. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura has spent decades studying the site, pointing to features that seem undeniably artificial, like what appear to be carved channels, a star-shaped platform, and even quarry marks on the stone. He argues this is the work of a lost civilization, perhaps the legendary continent of Mu. Yet, the scientific mainstream pushes back forcefully. Geologists point to the area's unique sandstone, which naturally fractures along straight plains due to tectonic activity. They argue the powerful currents of the region have simply sculpted and eroded the rock over millennia, creating an astonishing but completely natural facsimile of a city. So which is it? Is Yonaguni the world's oldest pyramid, a silent sentinel from a pre-flood world? Or is it simply geology's greatest magic trick, a masterpiece of random chance? This fundamental conflict between the hand of humanity and the hand of nature is the very heart of deep-sea mystery. It is a question that will echo through every story we explore. That question of nature versus creation haunts another discovery, one far colder and more isolated. In the dark, icy waters of the Baltic Sea, a team of Swedish treasure hunters were scanning the seabed in 2011, hoping to find sunken champagne or lost shipwrecks. Their sonar pinged back an image that made them forget all about treasure. Resting on the seafloor nearly 90 meters down was a perfect circular object. It was massive, roughly 60 meters across, with a distinct disc-shaped body and what appeared to be a tall, straight pillar rising from its center. To many who saw the sonar image, it looked uncannily like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, a strange geometric craft parked silently in the mud. But the strangeness did not stop with its shape. Leading up to the object was a long, deep groove in the seabed, a skid mark stretching for nearly 300 meters, as if this thing had crash-landed and plowed to a stop. The initial excitement sparked a frenzy of speculation. Was this a crashed, unidentified flying object, a relic from some ancient, non-human civilization buried under the ice for millennia? Others proposed it was a secret Nazi anti-submarine device from World War II, a lost piece of experimental technology. The team returned for a closer look, and the mystery only deepened. Their dive cameras captured a strange, rock-like surface, but their electronic equipment reportedly malfunctioned when they approached the object. Samples they retrieved were confusing, with some analysis suggesting the material was not ordinary rock, but metals like iron and titanium. Yet, the scientific community largely dismisses the extraordinary theories. Geologists argue it is a perfectly natural glacial deposit, a large nodule of rock left behind by a retreating Ice Age glacier thousands of years ago. The skid mark could simply be a glacial groove carved by the same ice. The unusual metal readings might be from a more recent shipwreck that settled on top of the older formation. The truth is, we simply do not know for sure. Major follow-up expeditions by established research institutions have been scarce, leaving the Baltic Sea Anomaly in a frustrating limbo. It remains one of the ocean's greatest what-is-that moments, a blurry sonar image that invites our wildest imaginations to fill in the blanks. It is a modern myth born not from ancient texts, but from the cryptic language of technology, a pixelated ghost on a screen that challenges us to look deeper. While the Baltic Sea Anomaly taunts us with its ambiguous form, another discovery from the deep leaves no doubt about its artificial origin. Its sophistication, however, is the true shock. In the year 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera were seeking natural treasures when they stumbled upon a human one. They found the wreck of a Roman cargo ship laden with statues, jewelry, and artifacts. Among the corroded bronze and broken marble, they recovered a lump of green, calcified material about the size of a large book. It seemed unremarkable at first, just another piece of ancient junk, but decades later, when archaeologists finally cracked it open, they saw gears, tiny, intricate, interlocking bronze gears. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, and it would force us to completely rethink the technological ceiling of the ancient world. This was not a statue or a weapon. It was a machine. Through painstaking analysis using modern X-ray and imaging technology, scientists have been able to peer inside this 2,000-year-old device. What they found was breathtaking. It contained at least 30 precise meshing gears, housed in a wooden case with dials and inscriptions on the front and back. It was, in essence, the world's oldest known analog computer. You would turn a hand crank on the side, and the gears would move, calculating and displaying the positions of the sun, the moon, and the 5 known planets. It could predict lunar and solar eclipses, track the cycles of the Olympic Games, and model the irregular orbit of the moon with a specific gear designed to account for its subtle wobble. The level of mechanical engineering and astronomical understanding required to build this is staggering. Nothing of comparable complexity would appear again until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. This one device, lost in a shipwreck, tells us that a pocket of ancient Greek science and engineering was far more advanced than our history books ever suggested. It was a product of a golden age of knowledge, likely linked to geniuses like Archimedes or Hipparchus. Its very existence is a haunting question. If this single, miraculous device survived by pure chance, what else was on that ship, or on 1,000 other ships that now rest in unmarked graves on the seafloor? What other chapters of human ingenuity, what other leaps of intellect were swallowed by the sea and lost forever? The Antikythera Mechanism is not a mystery of what it is, but a profound mystery of what its existence means for our forgotten past. That single device whispers of lost knowledge, but other discoveries shout of lost landscapes. The warm, shallow waters of the Caribbean hold 2 of the most famous enigmacies ever tied to the grandest legend of them all, Atlantis. Just off the coast of North Bimini in the Bahamas, divers can swim along a pathway that seems to defy nature. It is the Bimini Road, a neat line of massive, rectangular limestone blocks, each one roughly the size of a small car, laid out in a perfect J shape that stretches for almost half a mile along the sandy seabed. The blocks are flat on top and fitted together with unnerving precision, creating what looks for all the world like an ancient, submerged road or perhaps the crumbling foundation of a massive wall. When it was discovered in the 1960s, it was immediately hailed by some as the first physical proof of Atlantis. a remnant of a paved highway or a harbor breakwater from a sunken continent. The idea was intoxicating, a tangible piece of a mythical puzzle. Skeptics, however, offered a far less romantic explanation. They identified the stone as beak rock, a type of limestone that forms naturally in shallow tropical waters. This particular formation, they argue, fractured along natural planes in the stone, creating those deceptively perfect blocks. The straight line and curve could simply be a quirk of ancient shoreline geology, a natural pavement created by the tides and currents over thousands of years. The debate has raged for decades, with each side pointing to the same stones and seeing two entirely different histories carved into the rock. Yet if the Bimini Road teases us in the sunlit shallows, a far more profound mystery lies in the crushing darkness off the western tip of Cuba. In 2001, a marine exploration company was mapping the seabed when their advanced side-scan sonar painted a picture that stunned the researchers. Spread across a vast plateau over 2,000 feet below the surface, the sonar images revealed a series of striking geometric formations. There were what appeared to be smooth, pyramid-like structures, concentric circles that resembled foundations, and long, straight lines intersecting at right angles, all laid out with a regularity that screams of intelligent design. The scale was staggering, suggesting the layout of a vast urban complex, a city now silently resting under a half-mile of ocean water. The depth is the critical, haunting detail. 2,000 feet is far deeper than any known human civilization from the last ice age could have built, as sea levels were not that low. This fact fuels the most tantalizing and controversial theory, that these structures are remnants of a civilization so ancient. Its timeline predates all conventional history, a culture advanced enough to build a metropolis that later sank due to a cataclysmic geological event. The technical challenge of exploring such a site, however, is immense. At those depths, the pressure is lethal, requiring remotely operated vehicles or specialized submarines, and funding for such a high-risk, speculative expedition is scarce. So the Cuban underwater city remains frozen in a state of potential, known only through a handful of blurry sonar images. It is a ghost on a graph, a pattern in the data that invites us to dream of a world swallowed not by myth but by the abyss itself. The sheer inaccessibility of the site is what keeps the mystery perfectly preserved, a locked door at the bottom of the sea, daring us to find the key. The ghostly sonar images of a possible Cuban metropolis force us to confront a powerful reality. The sea does not just hide individual artifacts, it has consumed entire worlds. Along the sun-drenched coasts of the Mediterranean, the evidence of this slow drowning is not a matter of speculation, but of stone and bone. Here, 3 submerged cities offer us tangible windows into lives interrupted by the relentless rise of the water. We begin in the gentle, turquoise shallows off southern Greece. This is Pavlopetri, and it holds a singular title, the oldest known submerged city on our planet. It is not a collection of scattered ruins. As you glide over the seabed, you see a complete town plan frozen in time. The streets are still there, laid out in a clear grid. You can identify the foundations of homes, courtyards, tombs, and even what was likely a central marketplace. Archaeologists have mapped this entire Bronze Age settlement, a thriving community that dates back an astonishing 5,000 years. Walking its submerged streets today, you are quite literally tracing the footsteps of people from a time when the pyramids of Giza were still new. Pavlopetri did not vanish in a cataclysm. It was slowly abandoned as the sea crept inland, a victim of the planet's natural rhythms, leaving behind a perfect blueprint of an ancient urban life. For a more dramatic disappearance, we travel to the coast of Egypt. For centuries, the city of Heracleion was thought to be a myth, a legendary port of entry to Egypt mentioned only in ancient texts. Then, in the year 2000, a French archaeologist named Frank Godiot found it. Resting in the muddy waters of Baltic Bay, the lost city was revealed in all its staggering grandeur. The seafloor here is littered with colossal treasures, giant statues of pharaohs and gods standing over 16 feet tall, their solemn faces gazing upward through the water. There are inscribed stone slabs called steles, shipwrecks, countless gold coins and jewelry, and the remains of a massive temple complex. Heracleion was not a small town. It was a bustling, wealthy metropolis and the main customs gateway for all trade entering Egypt from the Greek world. Geologists believe a combination of rising sea levels, soft clay foundations, and perhaps a major earthquake caused this entire section of the Nile Delta to liquefy and sink, swallowing the city whole around the 8th century AD. Its rediscovery is like finding a missing chapter from a history book, a chapter written in granite and gold. But for a glimpse into a past so deep it defies comprehension, we must look to the coast of Israel. Here lies Atlat-Yam, a Neolithic village that has been submerged for nearly 9,000 years. This settlement predates Stonehenge, it predates the invention of metal, it predates almost everything we consider ancient history. The site contains the stone foundations of houses, wells lined with stone, and a mysterious semicircle of massive stones with cup marks carved into them, possibly for some ritualistic purpose. Yet the most profound discovery here is not a structure, but a silent witness to human suffering. Within the buried skeletons, scientists found the earliest known genetic evidence of tuberculosis. These people, struggling to build a community at the very dawn of agriculture, were already battling a disease that would haunt humanity for millennia. Atlat-Yam did not sink because of a sinking coastline. It was flooded by the melting glaciers of the last ice age, a direct casualty of our planet's great thaw. These three sites, from Greece to Egypt to Israel, are not anomalies. They are proof. They are evidence that our coastlines are littered with the drowned memories of humankind, entire societies that now live only in the silent, blue museum of the sea. This idea of a world reshaped by melting ice leads us to a discovery that should not exist, not here, not in the heart of North America. In the cool, deep waters of Lake Michigan, a team of archaeologists were conducting a routine survey of the lakebed in 2007, searching for old shipwrecks. Their sonar swept across the sandy bottom, and then it revealed something that stopped them cold. Resting about 40 feet below the surface near the town of Traverse City was a series of large stones. But these were not randomly scattered, they were deliberately arranged. One particularly striking image showed a line of stones, each about the size of a car tire, leading toward a central, much larger boulder. Nearby, other stones seemed to form a partial circle, a kind of crude henge. The arrangement was unmistakably intentional, a geometric pattern laid down by human hands in a place now claimed by freshwater. The implications are staggering. If this is authentic, it is a megalithic structure in the middle of the American Midwest. Preliminary estimates based on when the area was last dry land suggest it could be around 10,000 years old. That is a date that makes the mind reel. It would mean this simple stone circle was constructed millennia before Stonehenge's first stones were raised in England, and thousands of years before the Great Pyramids of Egypt were even a concept. It points to a sophisticated, organized society of Paleo-Indians, the very first peoples to inhabit the continent after the last ice age, who were not just nomadic hunters, but builders with a ritualistic or astronomical understanding of their world. Who were these people and what was this place for? The most compelling theory is that it served as a hunting blind or a ceremonial site, perhaps aligned with the movements of the sun or stars to mark the migrations of caribou herds across the ancient landscape. Its location, now submerged, is the key to its age and its fate. 10,000 years ago, this spot was not lakebed. It was dry ground, part of a vast tundra-like plain. As the colossal ice sheets retreated north, they released torrents of freshwater, filling the basin that became the Great Lakes. The water rose slowly over centuries, eventually swallowing this stone arrangement and preserving it in a cold, dark time capsule. This single sonar image challenges a deeply ingrained narrative. We are taught that monumental stone architecture is the exclusive domain of the Old World, of Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East. The Lake Michigan stones whisper a different story. They suggest that the human impulse to build, to mark the land with meaning, and to align our lives with the cosmos, is a universal thread in our shared history, one that appeared independently across the globe. It is a quiet, profound reminder that the first chapters of the human story in America are still being written, and they are written in stone at the bottom of a lake. But what if the urge to carve giant messages into the earth did not stop at the shoreline? High in the arid plains of Peru, the Nazca Lines are one of archaeology's most iconic puzzles. Massive geoglyphs of animals, plants, and geometric shapes etched into the desert floor, visible in their entirety only from the sky. Their purpose remains debated: a celestial calendar, a ritual pathway, a message to the gods. Yet a persistent and tantalizing report suggests this ancient artistry may have had a maritime counterpart. Off the coast of Peru, in the same region as the desert lines, divers and researchers have spoken of strange formations on the seabed. These are not random coral or rock. They are described as long, straight trenches and geometric patterns carved directly into the hard ocean floor, reminiscent of the famous land-based glyphs but submerged under fathoms of water. The idea is electrifying that the Nazca culture, famed for their desert canvases, also turned their attention to the Pacific, engraving their signature style into the continental shelf. So what could these underwater lines possibly be? One practical theory points to ancient aquaculture. They could be the remnants of sophisticated fish traps or tidal pools, engineered structures designed to corral marine life for harvest, their straight walls and channels mistaken from above for ceremonial art. Others suggest they might be natural formations, the result of powerful underwater currents scouring precise patterns into the sediment over millennia, a coincidence of hydrology that mimics human design. But the most thrilling possibility is that they are exactly what they appear to be: intentional creations by the Nazca or a related coastal people. If true, their purpose would be utterly different from the desert lines. You cannot see a seabed carving from the sky. These would be meant for a different viewer entirely. Perhaps they served as navigational markers for reed boats, visible through the clear, shallow water as guides to safe harbors or sacred sites along the coast. Or maybe they were ritualistic offerings to the ocean gods, carved at low tide in areas that would later be submerged, a symbolic bridge between the land they mastered and the sea that sustained them. The challenge, as with so many deep-sea mysteries, is verification. The reported sites are often in areas with strong currents, poor visibility, and significant depth, making detailed archaeological survey dangerous and expensive. Without clear photographic evidence or systematic study, the underwater Nazca lines remain in the realm of intriguing anecdote, a ghost story told by divers and a tantalizing what-if for historians. They represent the ultimate extension of a mystery, pushing the boundaries of an ancient culture's reach from the barren desert into the fertile, unforgiving sea, challenging us to wonder if the greatest gallery of prehistoric art is not on land but still hidden beneath the waves. The whispers of submerged architecture do not end with a single monument. Far from Yonaguni, the waters around Japan's southern islands hold other geometric ghosts. Near Okinawa, sonar surveys and intrepid divers have reported a series of startling formations resting on the dark seafloor. These are not the gentle slopes of a reef. They are described as massive, stepped structures with sharp, clean edges and flat terraces that climb like a staircase into the gloom. Some accounts speak of what appear to be wide avenues or plazas connecting these colossal blocks, all sitting at depths that would have been dry land during the last ice age. The imagery is powerful and specific, painting a picture not of a lone pyramid, but of an entire complex, a submerged citadel waiting in the silent dark. This evidence, often captured on grainy sonar scans or in the shaky footage of deep divers, has become a cornerstone for a bold historical idea. Alternative researchers and historians like Graham Hancock point to these formations as potential proof of a lost Pacific civilization, a sophisticated culture that thrived when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower. They propose that a cataclysmic event, perhaps a rapid melt pulse at the end of the last ice age, drowned their world in a geological instant, scattering survivors whose myths of a great flood echo in cultures across the globe. In this view, the stepped pyramids of Japan are not anomalies but ruins, the physical anchors of a forgotten chapter in human prehistory. Geologists, however, listen to a different story told by the same stone. They direct our attention to the bedrock itself. The region is rich in sandstone, a sedimentary rock that behaves in fascinating ways under tectonic stress. This stone naturally fractures along straight lines and flat plains, creating what geologists call jointing. Over millennia, the relentless power of ocean currents acts like a master sculptor, exploiting these natural weaknesses. The water erodes the softer material, undercuts the edges, and can leave behind astonishingly geometric shapes, all without a single human tool. What a diver might see as a carved staircase, a geologist sees as a textbook example of differential weathering, where harder layers of rock resist erosion and create those perfect stacked tiers. The debate, then, is a clash of perception. Are we seeing the ruins of a world that was, or are we witnessing the breathtaking artistry of natural forces, a masterpiece of time and tide that merely mimics our own architectural dreams? This persistent pattern of seeking human fingerprints in the deep sea landscape speaks to a profound cultural desire, a hope to find tangible evidence that our story is older, deeper, and more wondrous than the conventional timeline allows. The debate between nature and architecture is a grand one, but the sea also guards secrets of a far more intimate and haunting kind. In the cold, dark mud of Stockholm's harbour, a different kind of time capsule was waiting, one that held not just a ship, but the final moments of the people aboard her. This is the story of the Vasa, a magnificent Swedish warship that was the pride of a king. On her maiden voyage in the year 1628, before the cheering crowds, she sailed less than a mile, was caught by a gust of wind, and catastrophically capsized, sinking to the bottom with most of her crew. There she lay, perfectly preserved by the Baltic's cold, brackish waters for over 300 years. When she was raised in the 1960s, she was a breathtaking snapshot of the 17th century, her ornate wooden carvings still painted in vivid colors. But the true weight of the tragedy was found within her hull. Archaeologists discovered the skeletal remains of at least 15 souls who went down with the ship. These are not anonymous bones, they are individuals, each with a story swallowed by the sea. Forensic science allows us to whisper those stories back to life. By studying the bones, scientists can determine a person's sex, their approximate age, their stature, and even clues about their health and diet. They can see old injuries that had healed and sometimes the brutal trauma that ended their life. One skeleton in particular, known as G, tells a poignant tale. This was a man, likely in his 30s or 40s, who stood a little over 5 feet 6 inches tall. His bones showed signs of a life of hard labor, with robust muscle attachments and arthritis in his spine and shoulders, the kind of wear you would expect from a sailor constantly hauling ropes and climbing rigging. But there was more. He had a healed fracture on his collarbone, an old souvenir from a dangerous life at sea or perhaps a childhood accident. And then there was the evidence of his final moments. His body was found near the stern, close to where the officers would have been. Was he a seasoned petty officer trying to carry out a command as the ship listed? Or was he simply trapped below decks as the icy water rushed in? We will never know his name, but his bones tell us he was strong, he was a worker, and he met a sudden, terrifying end in the dark. This is the profound shift the deep sea forces upon us. It is not merely a museum for lost cities and grand artifacts, it is a silent cemetery, a keeper of personal, human-scale tragedies. Each skeleton on the Vasa is a life interrupted, a family left wondering, a personal history condensed into calcium and phosphate. They pull the vast, impersonal mystery of the ocean down to a deeply human level, reminding us that every grand historical event is, at its heart, a collection of individual stories, many of which are still waiting patiently in the mud. The silent stories of the Vasa are personal and recent, but the sea guards far older tales of commerce and connection. In the late Bronze Age, over 3,000 years ago, a ship set sail on the Mediterranean. Its journey would end abruptly off the rugged coast of what is now Turkey, near a place called Uluburan. There, around the year 1300 BC, this vessel sank to a depth of nearly 150 feet, carrying its secrets into the dark. It would not be found again until the 1980s, when a local sponge diver glimpsed strange, greenish lumps on the seafloor. Those lumps were copper ingots, and they were just the beginning. The Uluburan shipwreck is not merely an old boat, it is a floating treasury, a single snapshot of a globalized ancient world we are only beginning to comprehend. The cargo they recovered is nothing short of breathtaking, a manifest fit for a king. The hold was packed with 10 tons of raw copper, shaped into distinctive oxide ingots along with a ton of precious tin, the two metals that when combined create bronze, the lifeblood of the age. But this was not just a bulk carrier of raw materials. Mixed among the ingots were treasures from every corner of the known world. There were exquisite gold pendants and a scarab inscribed with the name of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti, suggesting a direct link to the pharaoh's court. There were beautiful Canaanite jewelry, pieces of gold and lapis lazuli, finely crafted Mycenaean pottery and swords, ivory from elephants and hippopotamuses, glass ingots from Mesopotamia, and even amber beads that originated in the distant Baltic forests over 1,000 miles away. This was a floating museum of the late Bronze Age, a single vessel connecting Egypt, Greece, Anatolia, the Levant, and beyond. So what was this ship and where was it going? The sheer wealth and diversity of the cargo fuels an enduring mystery. Was this a royal gift ship, a so-called diplomatic pouch on the water, carrying tribute and goodwill between powerful monarchs? Or was it a supremely well-connected merchant's vessel, a forerunner of modern global trade, collecting luxury goods from ports across the Mediterranean to sell for a fortune at its final destination? The presence of personal items like wooden writing tablets and bronze tools suggests a crew of mixed origin, perhaps Canaanite or Cypriot, seasoned traders navigating a complex web of alliances and markets. Its intended port remains lost to history, but the cargo points to a destination of immense power and wealth, possibly a major Mycenaean palace in Greece or a Hittite capital in Anatolia. And then the final, unanswered question: what sent this vital link in the ancient economy to the bottom? The wreck site offers clues but no verdict. The ship appears to have struck the rocky point at Uluburan head-on. Was this the result of a sudden, violent storm that blew the experienced crew off course and onto a lee shore? Could it have been an act of piracy, a desperate chase that ended with the ship driven onto the rocks? Or was it a simple, tragic error in navigation on a moonless night? The sea preserves the evidence, the scattered cargo and the shattered hull timbers, but it keeps the final moments to itself. The Uluburan shipwreck stands as a powerful testament to a world that was deeply interconnected long before we imagined it to be. A world where the fate of kingdoms could literally rest on the safe passage of a single ship through unpredictable waters. Its loss was a local tragedy, but its rediscovery is a global revelation, proving that the roots of our intertwined world lie not in the modern era, but in the sunken holds of ancient ships. While the Uluburan wreck confirms known ancient trade routes, some discoveries in the deep seem to shatter our maps entirely. scattered across the seafloor of the New World are small, metallic puzzles that defy our entire understanding of history. Off the coast of Venezuela and in the murky waters of Brazilian rivers, divers and fishermen have, on multiple occasions, pulled up ancient Roman coins. These are not replicas or modern souvenirs. They are genuine silver denarii and copper asses, minted during the reign of emperors like Augustus and Tiberius, dating from the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. The immediate problem is as simple as it is staggering. These coins predate the arrival of Christopher Columbus in the Americas by over 1,300 years. According to every history book, the Roman Empire and the ancient civilizations of the Americas existed in complete mutual ignorance, separated by an uncrossable ocean. So how did a coin from the treasury of Caesar Augustus end up buried in the silt of a Brazilian riverbed? The mainstream explanation is one of cautious dismissal. Skeptics propose these coins are modern losses, perhaps dropped overboard from a collector's boat in the 19th or 20th century, or even planted as an elaborate hoax. They argue that without a documented archaeological context, like a coin found embedded in a dated layer of sediment alongside other Roman artifacts, the find is essentially meaningless. A single coin is a stray data point, easily moved by human hands long after its minting. The ocean currents and shifting riverbeds could also, over centuries, transport a small object a considerable distance from where it was originally lost, muddying the waters of provenance even further. This is the safe scientific position, and it is a necessary one to guard against fantastical rewriting of history based on flimsy evidence. Yet the possibility, however remote, is tantalizing beyond measure. It invites us to consider a scenario that textbooks reject. Could a Roman vessel have been blown catastrophically off course? We know the Romans were capable sailors in the Mediterranean and coastal Atlantic. What if a storm caught a grain ship or a merchant galley near the Strait of Gibraltar, pushing it into the relentless grip of the Atlantic's westward currents? The journey would have been a nightmare of starvation and thirst, a one-way trip into the unknown. If, by some miracle, a shattered remnant of that ship and a handful of survivors made landfall on the coast of South America, what then? The survivors would have been utterly stranded, their technology and language incomprehensible to the indigenous peoples they encountered. They might have traded their last remaining coins for food or safe passage, introducing these strange metal discs into a world that had no concept of them. Within a generation or two, the memory of the pale, shipwrecked strangers would fade into local legend, and their coins would become curious trinkets, eventually lost to the rivers or the sea. This mystery lies at the bottom of the sea and in the river mud precisely because it is so fragile. A single coin cannot carry the weight of a revised history on its own. It is a whisper, not a shout, but it is a persistent whisper, and it forces a profound question. If one Roman coin can be dismissed as an anomaly, what would it take to prove contact? Would we need to find a wreck itself, a shattered hull of Roman construction resting on a Caribbean reef, its amphorae still sealed with wine from Italy? Until such a discovery is made, the coins remain in a historical limbo, glittering, inconvenient artifacts that sit outside of time, challenging us to wonder just how many lonely, desperate voyages the dark Atlantic has kept secret. The coins of Rome in American rivers challenge our maps, but in the coastal waters of India, a discovery does not challenge a map, it challenges a sacred text. For thousands of years, Hindu scriptures have spoken of a magnificent city, a place of divine origin and immense power. This was Dwaraka, the legendary capital of Lord Krishna, described in the ancient epic the Mahabharata as a fortress of gold and silver, adorned with palaces and gardens protected by mighty walls. The stories say it was a city of unparalleled splendor, but they also foretell its doom. After Krishna departed from the mortal world, the great city was swallowed by the sea, vanishing beneath the waves as if it had never been. For centuries, this was considered pure mythology, a beautiful allegory with no basis in physical reality. Then, archaeologists began to look beneath the waves off the coast of modern-day Gujarat, near a town that still bears the ancient name Dwarka. What they found would send ripples through both the scientific and spiritual worlds. Scattered across the seabed, buried in silt and sand, lay the bones of a lost city. Divers uncovered massive stone blocks, some weighing several tons, arranged in clear foundations and walls. They found stone pillars, some still standing upright as if holding up the roof of a long-collapsed hall. The artifacts pulled from the site were even more telling: terracotta pottery, beads, and sculptures that could be reliably dated. Scientific analysis, including carbon dating of wood samples from the site, points to a settlement that thrived there around 1500 to 2000 years before the Common Era, a date that aligns remarkably with the traditional timeline of Krishna's legend. The correlation is electrifying. The location matches the ancient descriptions, the timing fits. The scale of the submerged structures suggests a major, sophisticated port city, not a simple village. So, is this the legendary Dwarka of Krishna? For many believers, the answer is a resounding yes. The discovery is seen as a profound validation of faith, a physical anchor for stories passed down orally for millennia. It transforms the epic from mere poetry into potential history, suggesting the tales contain a kernel of truth about a real place and a real culture that met a catastrophic end. For archaeologists, the site is equally significant, but for different reasons. It presents a powerful case study in how myth can serve as a guide. Oral histories and religious texts are not always literal records, but they often preserve the memory of significant events, like the drowning of a great coastal city by rising seas or a sudden tsunami. The discovery at Dwarka demonstrates that these stories can be like a compass, pointing researchers to locations where major geological and human histories collided. The site does not prove the divine nature of Krishna, but it strongly suggests that a powerful, advanced city-state did exist at that very spot, and that its dramatic submergence left an indelible scar on the cultural memory of the region, a trauma that was woven into scripture over generations. This is the profound meeting point of faith and science. One sees the hand of God in the city's creation and destruction. The other sees the hand of geology and climate change. Yet both can look at the same sunken stones and agree on one fundamental truth. A great city once stood here, and the sea took it back. It is a reminder that sometimes the most enduring maps are not drawn on parchment, but sung in hymns and whispered in prayers, leading us not to treasure but to truth. The stones of Dwarka speak of a city reclaimed by the sea over centuries, but some underwater graves were created in a single, fiery day. In the heart of the Pacific, within the sheltered blue expanse of Truk Lagoon, the ocean floor holds a different kind of city, one not of stone but of steel. This is the Ghost Fleet, a sprawling underwater museum from a more recent, violent chapter of human history. During World War II, this lagoon served as a crucial anchorage for the Imperial Japanese Navy, a fortified haven for warships, tankers, and aircraft. Then, in a coordinated American assault in February 1944, Operation Hailstone turned this sanctuary into a tomb. For 2 days, bombs and torpedoes rained down, sending over 50 ships and hundreds of aircraft to the bottom in a furious, concentrated act of war. Today, the crystal-clear waters hold them all in a state of eerie suspension. This is not a mystery of what happened. The historical record is brutally clear. The mystery lies in the stories that sank with each vessel, and in the haunting, tangible presence of the past that divers encounter. You descend through shafts of sunlight and find a world frozen in 1944. A massive tanker rests on its side, its decks now vertical walls covered in soft corals. A fighter plane sits on the sand, its propeller bent, a garden of anemones blooming from its cockpit. The most profound sights are the human ones, the personal artifacts that turn these wrecks from metal hulks into memorials. Inside a ship's hold, you might see a stack of porcelain rice bowls still neatly piled, waiting for a meal that never came. In an officer's cabin, a bottle of sake rests on a rusted table. On the deck of a transport ship, a tank sits poised as if ready to roll ashore, its treads now home to schools of glittering fish. The preservation is astonishing, a result of the lagoon's depth and calm, cool waters. It creates an overwhelming sense of walking through a moment that was violently interrupted. The mystery here is intimate. Whose hand last held that rice bowl? Who was meant to drive that tank off the ramp and onto some distant beach? These ships are not just wrecks, they are time capsules of individual lives, ambitions, and fears, all swallowed by the lagoon in a matter of minutes. For the people of Chuk, the lagoon's name is a solemn place, a war grave where many souls were lost. For divers and historians, it is a uniquely accessible window into the scale and suddenness of total war, a conflict preserved not in books or black and white film, but in the silent, rusting landscape of the deep. It serves as a powerful, somber bridge, reminding us that the sea's role as a keeper of history did not end with ancient civilizations. It continues to hold our most recent tragedies, preserving them in a haunting state of decay, where the machinery of war slowly becomes part of the reef, a stark reminder that the deepest waters are also our most recent cemeteries. The silent steel of Truk Lagoon speaks of a modern cataclysm, but far older and quieter waters hold a mystery of pure stone. In the serene freshwater of the Sea of Galilee, a lake steeped in ancient history, a discovery was made that defies simple explanation. Resting on the muddy bottom, not far from the shore, is a colossal cone of stones. This is not a natural formation. It is a carefully assembled cairn, a giant pile of basalt boulders, each one roughly the size of a basketball, meticulously stacked into a perfect, symmetrical shape. The scale is what truly staggers the mind. This underwater monument measures nearly 70 meters across at its base and rises 10 meters high, making it, in terms of sheer mass, larger than the iconic circle of Stonehenge. It is a megalithic feat hiding in plain sight, or rather, beneath the placid surface of one of the world's most famous lakes. Carbon dating of shells trapped within the structure suggests it was built over 4,000 years ago in the early Bronze Age, a time of emerging city-states and profound cultural change in the region. So what is this massive pile of stones doing at the bottom of a lake? The first and most practical theory points to survival. It could have been an ancient fish nursery, an artificial reef constructed to attract and concentrate fish for easier harvesting by local communities. The structure's shape and placement might have created ideal conditions for breeding, a clever piece of Stone Age aquaculture that fed a growing population. Yet, the immense effort required to move thousands of heavy basalt rocks, some weighing up to 100 pounds each, suggests a purpose grander than a simple fishing tool. This leads to the second, more spiritual possibility. Perhaps it was a ceremonial site, a sacred place for rituals connected to the water itself. Could it have been an altar for offerings to a water deity, or a marker for a significant astronomical event, its form mirroring the nearby hills? Some researchers even propose it might be a burial monument, a colossal tomb for a revered chieftain, intended to be seen from the shore as a permanent testament to his power. This raises the most perplexing logistical puzzle of all. How was it even built? The cairn now sits under several meters of water. There are two possibilities, each as challenging as the other. The first is that it was constructed on dry land during a period of severe drought when the lake's level dropped dramatically, exposing the basin floor. A community could have then labored to build this monument, only to have it submerged again when the rains returned and the waters rose, preserving it for millennia. The second, far more difficult scenario is that it was built underwater intentionally. This would imply a society with remarkable diving and engineering skills, able to coordinate the placement of thousands of stones in the murky depths, a feat that seems almost impossible for the technology of the time. The Sea of Galilee cairn forces us to look beyond the vast, salty expanse of the open ocean. It reminds us that inland seas and freshwater lakes are also profound keepers of the past, often guarding their secrets in the most unexpected places. This massive, silent pile of stones, a neighbor to biblical towns and modern cities alike, sits as a silent question mark on the lake bed, its true purpose as opaque and deep as the water that now covers it. The massive cairn in the Sea of Galilee is a monument to a forgotten purpose, but for the ancient Greeks, one city's disappearance was a moral lesson written by the gods themselves. This is the story of Helike, a powerful and prosperous city-state on the Gulf of Corinth. In the winter of 373 BC, Helike was at its peak, a leading member of the Achaean League and the center of worship for Poseidon, the god of the sea and earthquakes. Then, in a single night, it was utterly erased. Ancient historians like Strabo and Pausanias recorded the catastrophe. They described how for 5 days, small animals like snakes and mice fled the city, a strange omen the citizens ignored. Then a massive earthquake struck, the ground convulsed, buildings collapsed, and immediately after, a colossal tsunami from the Gulf rushed inland, swallowing the entire city. Every soul in Helike was lost. The city and its sacred grove of Poseidon were dragged beneath the waters, vanishing into a newly formed lagoon. For the ancient world, this was not a random tragedy. It was divine punishment. The people of Helike had angered Poseidon, the story went, by refusing to give their statue of the god to representatives from a neighboring city, or in some versions by violating his sacred sanctuary. The sea god's retribution was swift and total, sinking his own worshippers as a warning to all of Greece. Helike became a legend, a mythic lost city like Atlantis, but with a precise date and a moral attached. For centuries afterward, writers reported that the ruins could still be glimpsed beneath the clear water, a haunting destination for fishermen and travelers. Then the lagoon silted up, and even that ghostly vision faded. Helike was gone, its location slowly forgotten, transforming from a historical event into a pure fable. The search for the real Helike became an obsession for archaeologists. They looked for it under the sea, probing the waters of the Gulf of Corinth, convinced the city lay offshore, preserved in a watery grave. They found nothing. The breakthrough came in the late 1980s and 90s, not from marine archaeology, but from soil cores drilled into a coastal plain several miles inland. The researchers, led by Dr. Dora Katsanopoulou and Dr. Stephen Soter, discovered something astonishing. Buried under layers of river silt and pebbles, more than 30 feet below the modern surface, were the unmistakable signs of a classical Greek city. They found building foundations, pottery, coins minted in Helike, and even a bronze coin stuck to a collapsed wall, frozen in the moment the earthquake hit. Helike had been found, but not under the sea. The discovery revealed a profound geological twist. The cataclysm that destroyed Helike was a 1-2 punch. First, the violent earthquake caused the soft, waterlogged soil beneath the city to liquefy, a process where solid ground instantly turns into a fluid slurry. The entire city literally sank into its own foundations. Then, the tsunami swept over the sunken ruins, depositing a layer of marine shells and sea sediment. Finally, in the centuries that followed, massive earthquakes in the region caused dramatic coastal uplift. The land rose, the shoreline moved seaward, and rivers pouring down from the mountains covered the sunken city with thick layers of silt and gravel, burying it ever deeper, not underwater but under earth. This is the brilliant, clarifying twist of Helike's mystery. It teaches us that the deep sea of legend can be a moving target. A city famously said to have been swallowed by the sea now sleeps under a farmer's field. Solving these ancient puzzles demands we think like detectives of the earth itself, tracing not just history but the restless, shifting dance of land and water. The gods may have written the story, but geology held the pen, hiding the truth in plain sight under layers of mud and time. The story of Heracleion shows us how a city can vanish from sight and memory, but for the most legendary sailors of the ancient world, the opposite is true. We know they existed, we know they dominated the seas, yet the ocean refuses to give up their ships. This is the curious case of the Phoenicians. For centuries, these master mariners from the coasts of modern-day Lebanon and Syria were the undisputed lords of the Mediterranean. Their sturdy vessels, powered by both sail and oar, created the first true maritime trading network, connecting empires from Egypt to Mesopotamia to the raw, mineral-rich shores of Spain and even beyond, perhaps circling the entire continent of Africa. They carried purple dye, glass, cedar wood, and most importantly, ideas, acting as the crucial link between the great civilizations of the Bronze and Iron Ages. Their legacy is written in the alphabets we use today and in the histories written by their rivals, the Greeks and Romans. And yet, if you were to search the Mediterranean seafloor for the physical proof of this nautical empire, you would find almost nothing. It is a profound and puzzling absence. Where are all the Phoenician shipwrecks? This is the Mary Celeste mystery of the ancient world, a ghost story told not by a single missing vessel, but by an entire missing fleet. The answer lies in a combination of cunning, geography, and simple, brutal physics. First, the Phoenicians were brilliant shipwrights, but they built for purpose, not for eternity. Their ships were constructed primarily from cedar, a fragrant, workable wood that is unfortunately highly susceptible to marine worms and rapid decay. Unlike stone amphorae or metal ingots, organic wood simply does not last for millennia on the seabed unless it is buried in exceptional conditions. Second, consider their sailing strategy. The Phoenicians were not coastal huggers out of fear, they were deep water sailors out of efficiency and secrecy. They pioneered celestial navigation, using the stars to plot direct, open sea routes across the Mediterranean's vast basins. A shipwreck in the deep abyssal plain, thousands of feet down, is far less likely to be discovered than one dashed upon a coastal reef. Their preferred trade routes often took them through the deepest parts of the sea, where any lost ship would sink into a dark, silent grave, far from the continental shelves where modern archaeology typically focuses. Finally, there is the nature of their cargo. While they carried luxury goods, much of their wealth was in perishable commodities, fine textiles, dyed fabrics, spices, and foodstuffs that would leave no trace on the seafloor. A Phoenician wreck might not have the telltale pile of ceramic jars that signals a Greek or Roman ship to sonar scanners. It might simply be a faint stain in the sediment, the ghost of a wooden hull that vanished centuries ago. This immense void makes a single discovery all the more electrifying. Off the coast of the island of Gozo near Malta, archaeologists investigated a site known as the Exlendi wreck. Here, in relatively shallow water, they found a scatter of pottery that was unmistakably Phoenician in origin, dating to around the 7th century BC. More importantly, they found a small pile of ballast stones, the heavy rocks placed in a ship's hold to keep it stable. Ballast stones are the signature of a shipwreck. They mark the final resting place of the vessel itself, even when the wooden hull has completely rotted away. The Exlendi site is tantalizing, but it is also fragmentary and heavily looted. It is a whisper, a single, frayed thread from the vast tapestry of Phoenician maritime history. It proves they were there, that their ships sailed these waters, but it does not give us the preserved hull, the intact cargo, the personal belongings of the crew that would bring their story to life. So the great mystery remains. The Phoenicians mapped the ancient world with their voyages, yet their most important vehicles, the ships that made it all possible, have sailed into oblivion. They are the ultimate ghosts of the deep, a civilization we know changed history, whose physical presence on the seabed is as elusive as a shadow on the water. Their absence is a haunting reminder that the sea keeps its most valuable secrets not by hiding them, but by letting them dissolve completely, leaving us with only the echo of their wake. The Phoenicians may have vanished without a trace, but the Baltic Sea seems determined to leave its cryptic marks everywhere we look. Beyond the infamous disc-shaped anomaly, this cold, brackish basin hides another layer of strangeness. Scattered across its muddy floor, sonar surveys have repeatedly detected something deceptively simple: perfect circles. These are not small pits or random depressions. They are large geometric formations, some measuring up to 60 feet across, with sharply defined edges that look as if they were drawn with a compass on the seabed. They appear with an eerie regularity, often in clusters, and their precision is what first captures the imagination. On a sonar screen, against the chaotic backdrop of natural sediment, these perfect rings stand out like deliberate signatures. So what could possibly create such flawless shapes in the deep, dark silt? Science offers several compelling, if mundane, answers. The leading theory points to geology and chemistry. The Baltic's floor is rich in organic decay, which produces methane gas. This gas can seep upward, pooling beneath the sediment. When pressure builds, it can erupt in a sudden, focused burst, blowing a neat, circular crater in the mud before dissipating into the water column. It is a natural underwater geyser, leaving behind a perfect pit as its calling card. Another explanation involves the unique physics of the region. The Baltic has complex, layered currents and unusual patterns of ice scour from ancient glaciers. Some researchers suggest that specific interactions between these currents and the shape of the seabed could create circular vortexes that gently but persistently scour these patterns into the soft bottom over centuries, like a slow, invisible potter's wheel etching its design. Yet the human mind, especially when confronted with such geometric perfection in a place already steeped in mystery, naturally leaps toward more extraordinary possibilities. The circle's proximity to the larger Baltic Sea anomaly fuels intense speculation. Could they be related? In the realm of the speculative, they are sometimes interpreted as landing pads or markers for some unknown craft, a kind of underwater runway system. Others propose they are the surface evidence of buried, ancient structures, perhaps the ring foundations of temples or dwellings now completely covered by millennia of sediment. More esoteric ideas suggest they could be points of natural energy convergence, or even residues from some unexplained technology, either human or otherwise, that interacted with the seabed and left these permanent scars. This mystery, perhaps more than any other, perfectly encapsulates the deep sea's power to baffle us. It leans unapologetically into the weird and the unexplained. The giant underwater circles are a Rorschach test on the ocean floor. A geologist sees a methane vent, a physicist sees a fluid dynamics experiment, but a dreamer sees a pattern, intention, a message. Their true power lies in that ambiguity. They are not obviously artificial like a pottery shard, nor are they clearly natural like a rolling hill. They occupy a tantalizing middle ground, proving that the chaotic forces of nature can, on occasion, produce works of such startling order that they mimic intelligence. They require no ancient astronauts or lost civilizations to be fascinating. Their very existence is a quiet reminder that the abyss is still a master of illusion, crafting puzzles out of mud and gas that are compelling enough to fuel our imagination for generations. The Baltic's cryptic circles remind us that nature can craft its own perfect geometry, but other drowned landscapes tell a story not of mystery but of memory. Around the world, beneath the gentle waves of coastal shelves, lie entire forgotten worlds. These are the sunken forests. Off the coast of Alabama in the United States, divers can swim through a haunting grove of ancient cypress trees. The stumps are still rooted in the soil, their bark preserved by the cold, dark, oxygen-poor water. They are not petrified into stone, they are the original wood, standing in silent rows as they have for millennia. This is not an isolated wonder. In the North Sea, fishermen have for centuries pulled up strange, dark, compressed blocks of organic material in their nets. This is peat, the compacted remains of a vast prehistoric swamp, and embedded within it are the bones of mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and other giants of the Ice Age. These are the remnants of Doggerland, a sprawling, fertile plain that once connected Great Britain to mainland Europe, a landscape teeming with life that is now a submerged graveyard under 60 feet of seawater. These forests and peat beds are not human mysteries in the traditional sense. No one built them. Instead, they are natural historical archives, time capsules sealed by the sea itself. Their story is one of profound planetary change. At the peak of the last ice age, so much of the Earth's water was locked up in colossal ice sheets that global sea levels were over 400 feet lower than they are today. What are now shallow continental shelves were dry, exposed land. The area off Alabama was a river valley forest. The North Sea was a chilly but habitable grassland and swamp. Then the world warmed. The great glaciers began to melt and retreat, releasing torrents of freshwater back into the oceans. The seas rose not in a sudden flood, but in a relentless, creeping advance over centuries. The forests died as saltwater poisoned their roots. The peat bogs were drowned. The Great Plains were slowly inundated, their animal inhabitants forced to retreat until there was nowhere left to go. The water won, and an entire chapter of the Earth's ecological history was gently buried beneath the waves. What do these silent, submerged landscapes tell us? First, they are a stark lesson in climate change written in mud and wood. They prove that our planet's geography is not fixed but fluid, reshaped dramatically by shifts in temperature. They show us exactly what was lost when the Ice Age ended, providing a perfect fossil record of ancient ecosystems that would have otherwise been scoured away by wind and rain on land. But they also hold a deeply human connection. These were not empty wildernesses. As the peat beds of the North Sea are dredged alongside mammoth bones, fishermen and researchers have occasionally found something else: flint tools, harpoon points, and carved antlers. These artifacts are the undeniable proof that people lived, hunted, and made their homes on this land when it was dry. Doggerland was populated. The forested coast off Alabama likely saw the camps of some of the earliest peoples to enter the continent. These were not lost civilizations in the grand architectural sense, but they were lost worlds, the hunting grounds and homelands of our ancient ancestors, now accessible only by submarine or dredge. Their discovery collapses time, reminding us that the very ground beneath the ocean's waves was once someone's familiar earth, walked by human feet and roamed by creatures of legend. The same relentless sea that swallowed forests and plains also claimed the very foundations of classical power. While the mighty Parthenon still crowns the Acropolis, the true engine of Athenian dominance lies silent and submerged along the modern coastline. This is the lost harbor of Piraeus, the legendary naval base of ancient Athens, and much of it now rests under 20 feet of water. For centuries, this wasn't a mystery of location. Everyone knew Piraeus was the port, but a mystery of scale and preservation. The grand harbor complex described by historians seemed exaggerated, its details lost to time and urban sprawl on land. Then, underwater archaeologists began to map the seafloor, and the sheer magnitude of Athenian engineering rose from the silt. What they found was a submerged blueprint for a maritime superpower. The most striking features are the colossal fortification walls, massive blocks of stone that once formed an unbroken barrier connecting Piraeus to Athens itself, the famous Long Walls. Sections of these walls now lie perfectly preserved on the harbor bottom, their straight lines and careful masonry visible where land-based sections have been quarried away or buried. But the harbor's true genius is seen in the ship sheds, the neosoikoi. These were not simple docks, but vast, covered slipways designed to house the city's fleet of triremes, the swift wooden warships that ruled the Aegean. The sunken remains reveal their precise dimensions and layout, long, narrow foundations cut into the bedrock, showing how hundreds of these sophisticated vessels could be stored, protected from sun and shipworms, and launched at a moment's notice. We can see the outlines of the commercial docks, the Emporion, where goods from across the Mediterranean were unloaded, fueling Athens' wealth and ambition. So how did this happen? How does a bustling harbor end up underwater? The culprit here is not rising sea levels, but the land itself sinking. The region is geologically active, prone to what scientists call subsidence. Over the millennia, the ground beneath Piraeus has slowly, steadily descended, allowing the sea to encroach and claim the ancient waterfront. This geological misfortune, however, became an archaeological miracle. The water acted as a protective blanket, sealing the harbor's infrastructure in mud and shielding it from the constant rebuilding and destruction that erases history on land. The submerged stones are a time capsule, preserving the exact angles of a slipway, the wear patterns on a quay, the layout of a warehouse district in ways that centuries of later construction on shore never could. This mystery is largely solved. We know what Piraeus was and how it sank, but its value is incalculable. It provides a tangible, measurable record of classical engineering and logistical mastery. By studying these sunken foundations, we can calculate exactly how many ships the Athenians could deploy, understand the flow of trade through the port, and grasp the immense organized effort required to maintain naval supremacy. The silent, waterlogged ruins of Piraeus don't whisper of myth or catastrophe. They speak plainly of calculated power, of a society that didn't just build temples to the gods, but built a machine for controlling the sea. It is a stark reminder that sometimes the most direct window into the past isn't on a hilltop, but beneath the quiet water of a modern marina, where the footprints of giants are still etched in stone. The engineering marvel of Piraeus shows us a harbor intentionally built, but some ancient coastlines hold structures that seem to have been abandoned by the land itself. This brings us to the sun-drenched archipelago of Malta, a place already legendary for its prehistoric stone temples, some of the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. These massive complexes, like Haga Kim and Mnajdra, stand as silent testimony to a temple-building culture that thrived here over 5,000 years ago. Yet, the full story of these people may not be confined to the present-day islands. Scattered along Malta's rugged shores are enigmatic clues that the builder's world extended far beyond today's coastline. Perhaps the most compelling are the so-called cart ruts. Across the limestone plateaus of Malta and its sister island Gozo, you can find hundreds of these parallel grooves cut deep into the bedrock. They look precisely like the tracks left by heavy wooden carts over centuries, but their origin and purpose remain fiercely debated. Some lead directly to cliff edges and vanish into the blue Mediterranean. Divers investigating these underwater extensions have reported seeing the same ruts continuing down the submerged rock face, descending into the gloom until they disappear under sand and silt. Then there are the scattered reports from fishermen and divers of large, rectangular stone blocks resting on the seabed in shallow waters, blocks that resemble the megaliths used in the island's famous temples, but now lying in disarray under the waves. These fragmentary clues point toward a tantalizing possibility. During the peak of the last ice age, when global sea levels were over 300 feet lower, the geography of this region was utterly transformed. Malta, Gozo, and the smaller island of Comino were not separate islands. They were connected into one much larger landmass, part of a broad peninsula stretching south from what is now Sicily. The vast, shallow shelf between the islands was dry, fertile land. This means the temple-building culture we know from archaeology did not live on small, isolated rocks in the sea. They inhabited a more expansive territory with more space for settlements, farmland, and undoubtedly more temples. The theory posits that some of their most significant sites, perhaps even their earliest or most important ceremonial centers, were constructed on what was then prime coastal land. As the Ice Age ended and the meltwater poured back into the oceans, the sea rose relentlessly. it would have first flooded the low-lying plains between the hills, turning the single landmass into the archipelago we see today. Then it would have crept up those ancient coasts, swallowing the outermost settlements and structures. The cart ruts that lead into the sea might literally be ancient roadways that once connected inland areas to coastal villages that no longer exist. Those large underwater blocks could be the tumbled remains of a temple or monument that was slowly undermined by the rising water and collapsing into the sea. This mystery connects directly to a profound and recurring theme. We study the magnificent temples that survived on high ground and assume we see the complete picture of this ancient culture. But what if we are only seeing the hilltop sanctuaries, the structures that escaped the flood? What if their true heartland, their ports, their farmlands, and their oldest sacred sites now lie under 100 feet of Mediterranean water, their stories silenced by the sea? The search for Malta's submerged megaliths is not just about finding more stones. It is about finding the missing context for one of humanity's earliest architectural wonders, a search for the lost homeland of the first temple builders. It suggests that the full map of our prehistoric past is not drawn on today's shorelines, but on the forgotten contours of a world that drowned. The silent, submerged stones of Malta whisper of a world lost to rising seas, but in the same Mediterranean, just a few centuries later, another force emerged from the deep that did not build but burned. Ancient Egyptian and Hittite inscriptions carve a terrifying story into their temple walls. They speak of a sudden, violent storm from the sea. This was not a storm of wind and water, but of men and ships, a mysterious coalition of warriors who swept across the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BC. The records give them a chillingly vague name, the Sea Peoples. They are described as relentless, unstoppable, arriving from the heart of the Great Green, the ancient term for the open sea. They sacked cities, toppled empires, and are credited as a primary catalyst for the catastrophic Bronze Age collapse, the event that plunged the civilized world into a centuries-long dark age. We know their devastating impact from the terrified accounts of their victims, but we know almost nothing about who they actually were. Where did they come from? Were they displaced refugees, opportunistic pirates, or an organized military alliance from a forgotten homeland? Their origins are the ultimate historical cold case. And this leads to a profound, tangible mystery on the seafloor. If the Sea Peoples were such a formidable naval power, capable of challenging the might of Egypt and the Hittites, where is their fleet? Where are their ships? Consider the scale of their campaign. To pose an existential threat to multiple empires simultaneously, they must have possessed a vast armada, hundreds of vessels carrying thousands of warriors. Naval battles of that era were brutal, close-quarters affairs of ramming, boarding, and fire. In the chaos of a major engagement against the Egyptian navy, which we know occurred during the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III, it is almost a certainty that many ships were sunk. A catastrophic storm could have swallowed an entire fleet in a single night. Yet to date, not a single shipwreck has been conclusively identified as belonging to the Sea Peoples. Not one. This absence creates a fascinating meta-mystery. We are searching for the physical evidence of a historical ghost. Finding a Sea People's wreck would be the underwater equivalent of discovering the tomb of a mythical king. It would be one of archaeology's holy grails, a time capsule from the very eye of the hurricane that ended the Bronze Age. What would such a discovery look like? The ship's construction would be a revelation. Its design, its joinery, the shape of its hull would tell us immediately if these were advanced mariners from the Aegean, displaced Anatolians, or a hybrid culture from elsewhere. The cargo would be a snapshot of a society on the move. Would we find household goods, looms, and seed grain, suggesting a mass migration of entire families? Or would we find only weapons, armor, and looted treasure, pointing to a purely militaristic, piratical horde? Personal artifacts, the comb of a warrior, the toy of a child, could finally give a human face to these faceless invaders. The sea, however, guards this secret closely. The wood of their ships has long since dissolved. Any surviving evidence would likely be a scatter pattern on the seabed, a collection of stone anchors, bronze weaponry, and distinctive pottery that doesn't match any known local style. It would be a puzzle in the silt, waiting for an archaeologist to recognize its pattern. This search is more than academic. It is a quest for the missing link in one of history's greatest upheavals. The Sea Peoples did not just attack empires, they helped erase them, creating a blank slate from which new worlds like classical Greece and Phoenicia would eventually rise. Their sunken armada, wherever it lies, holds the key to understanding not just how an age ended, but how our world began. The shadowy legacy of the Sea Peoples reminds us that the deep can erase entire chapters of history, but sometimes it offers up a single, solitary object that seems to erase logic itself. This brings us to our final and perhaps most perplexing category of deep sea mystery, the out-of-place artifact. These are not sunken cities or lost shipwrecks. They are individual, often small, objects pulled from the seabed that appear to be impossibly out of time or place, defying every established timeline we have. They are the ultimate outliers, and they push the boundaries of speculation to its very edge. Consider the stories that surface from time to time, tales from dredging operations or deep sea mining surveys. A trawler's net hauls up a strange, tool-like stone from a depth of thousands of feet, a depth where no human hand could have possibly dropped it. Or the persistent accounts of what looks like a modern, machined metal object, perhaps a gear or a bolt, found embedded inside a solid chunk of ancient seabed rock, as if it was sealed inside for millions of years. These finds are the ultimate conversation starters and the ultimate headaches for science. The central problem is one of context. In a proper archaeological dig on land, an artifact's story is told by its surroundings. It is found in a specific layer of soil alongside pottery of a known age beneath the foundation of a dated building. This context allows us to say with confidence this coin is from the 3rd century. The deep sea, however, is a chaotic blender. Currents shift sediments, landslides bury objects, and a single item can travel vast distances before settling. A stone tool dredged from the abyssal plain could have fallen from a prehistoric canoe thousands of years ago, or it could have been dumped as ballast from a 19th century steamship. That strange metal object in the rock, it could be a genuine, mind-bending anomaly, or it could be a piece of modern drilling equipment that simply became cemented into a fresh, fast-forming mineral deposit on the seafloor, a process that can happen in decades, not eons. Without that clear, undisturbed archaeological layer, these objects float in a kind of historical limbo. They are facts without a story, and that vacuum of explanation is where the wildest theories rush in. For those who believe in ancient advanced civilizations or even extraterrestrial visitors, these artifacts are the ultimate proof. That machined metal bit becomes evidence of a pre-flood society with industrial technology. The tool from the abyss is seen as a relic from Atlantis, dropped as that continent sank into the deep. The ocean's perfect preservative qualities give these ideas weight, because if such a civilization did exist, the seafloor is exactly where its remnants would be, safe from the erosion and destruction that ravages the land. These out-of-place artifacts represent the farthest frontier of deep-sea mystery. They are not puzzles we are close to solving, they are provocations. They challenge our arrogance about the past. They force us to admit that the vast, unexplored darkness beneath the waves could hold absolutely anything. Every trawler's net, every robotic submersible's claw, has the potential to bring up an object that doesn't just add to history, but shatters it completely. They are the reason we keep looking into the abyss, not just for answers we expect, but for the one discovery we cannot even imagine. But these tantalizing fragments and ghostly sonar images are only the beginning of the story. The true revolution in uncovering the ocean's secrets lies not in what we find, but in how we look. For most of human history, the deep sea was a realm of pure imagination, a blank space on the map where monsters were drawn. We could only guess at what lay below, relying on chance discoveries by fishermen or the rare, perilous dive of a brave individual. That era is over. Today, we do not simply dive into the abyss, we illuminate it with machines. The hunt for lost worlds now begins with sound. Side-scan sonar is the workhorse of modern seafloor exploration. Think of it as a high-tech flashlight for the dark. Towed behind a ship, it sends out fan-shaped pulses of sound to either side. These sound waves bounce off the seabed, and by measuring the intensity and timing of the echoes, a detailed acoustic picture is painted. A hard, angular object like a shipwreck or a carved stone block reflects sound strongly, showing up as a bright, sharp signature on the sonogram. Soft mud or sand appears darker and smoother. This is how anomalies like the Baltic Sea disk or the geometric lines off Cuba were first spotted, as unexpected bright blips and sharp edges on a scrolling screen of data. But to get an even clearer, three-dimensional map, scientists turn to multi-beam echosounders. Mounted on a ship's hull, these systems fire a whole curtain of sound beams straight downward, covering a wide swath of the seafloor with each ping. They measure not just the strength of the return, but the precise angle, building a breathtakingly accurate topographic map of the underwater landscape. With multibeam, we can see not just an object, but the hill it sits on, the valley next to it, the long skid mark leading up to it. It transforms the seabed from a mysterious flat plain into a detailed, navigable terrain of mountains, canyons, and plains, revealing where to look for the human stories buried within. Once a promising target is identified, the next step is to send down our eyes and hands. This is where remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, take over. These are unmanned, tethered robots, often the size of a small car, packed with high-definition cameras, powerful lights, and robotic manipulator arms. Piloted from the comfort of a control room on the surface ship, an ROV can hover motionless in a crushing current, gently brush sediment from a 2,000-year-old artifact, or retrieve a sample with surgical precision. They can stay down for days, unbothered by cold, pressure, or the need for sleep, transmitting a live video feed that feels like a portal to another world. For the deepest, most dangerous missions, we use manned submersibles. These are the spacecraft of the deep, pressure hulls of titanium or acrylic that carry human pilots and scientists right into the heart of the darkness. In a submersible, you are not just watching a screen, you are there, peering out a viewport as your lights cut through the eternal night, illuminating a wreck or a formation with your own eyes. The emotional and scientific impact of that direct human presence is irreplaceable, allowing for instant analysis and that spark of intuition that a remote operator might miss. This technological leap has fundamentally changed the game. We are no longer limited to the shallow continental shelf where scuba divers can work. Now, we can systematically search and document the seafloor at any depth, from the sunlit reefs to the Haddle trenches miles down. We can find a single amphora in a field of mud, or map an entire drowned city block by block, and the future is arriving faster than the currents. Artificial intelligence is now being trained to scan millions of sonar images, learning to distinguish a natural rock formation from a potential shipwreck with superhuman speed and consistency. Swarms of smaller, autonomous underwater drones will soon canvass vast areas of the seabed, working together like a hive mind to create real-time, three-dimensional models of archaeological sites. The pursuit of ancient mysteries has become a deeply futuristic endeavor. The stories we are trying to recover are millennia old, but the tools we use to find them are literally science fiction made real. Every new discovery on the ocean floor is now a collaboration across time, a dialogue between the silent, patient past and the brilliant, probing light of our own ingenuity. This technological leap means we have barely scratched the surface of what the abyss truly holds. For all our sonar and submersibles, the sobering reality is that we have mapped a greater percentage of the surface of Mars than our own planet's ocean floor. The vast majority of this hidden world remains a blank canvas, a realm of pure potential where anything might be waiting. The deepest trenches, like the Mariana, are places of alien pressure and perpetual darkness where the geology itself is a mystery. Could the walls of these chasms hold the wreckage of ancient, deep-diving vessels we cannot even conceive of? The Arctic seafloor, locked under ice for millennia, is a time capsule of a different kind. As the ice retreats, it may reveal landscapes untouched since the last ice age, perhaps even preserving the campsites of the very first humans to cross the Bering Land Bridge, now submerged under the polar sea. And then there are the endless, rolling plains of the abyss, the largest habitat on Earth. Stretching for millions of square miles, these muddy deserts could conceal countless lost ships, from Phoenician traders to medieval caravels blown fatally off course, each one a sealed diary of its era. What grand discoveries might lie in these uncharted depths? The dreams are as vast as the ocean itself. We could find the sunken palace of a forgotten coastal kingdom, its walls adorned with art that rewrites an entire culture's history. We might locate one of the great lost libraries, perhaps a vessel carrying scrolls from the Library of Alexandria that went down in a storm, their knowledge preserved in saltwater instead of flame. The seabed could hold the ultimate evidence of prehistoric human migration, stone tools and hearths scattered across the drowned plains of Doggerland or the Beringia Shelf, mapping the paths our ancestors walked when the world was drier and the oceans were lower. Each possibility is a thread leading back to a story we have never heard. Yet this immense museum is facing a silent crisis. The very technology that allows us to discover these sites also empowers industries that could erase them forever. Deep sea mining operations in search of rare metals propose to strip mine vast areas of the abyssal plain. Their massive machines would churn the sediment into a cloudy soup, obliterating any fragile archaeological evidence in their path, turning a potential library of the past into an industrial wasteland in a matter of days. Bottom trawling, dragging heavy nets across the seafloor to catch fish, already scrapes away centuries of history, scattering artifacts and smoothing over ruins before we ever have a chance to see them. It is a race against time and against our own appetite for resources. A shipwreck that survived 1,000 years on the seabed can be destroyed in an afternoon by a single net. This forces a profound shift in perspective. We must learn to see the deep ocean not as a barren resource to be exploited, but as the world's greatest and most fragile museum. Its collections are not curated on shelves. They are laid out across continents of darkness, preserved in cold and pressure. We are only now walking through the front doors, flashlight in hand, realizing the galleries stretch beyond sight. Every strange sonar return, every artifact pulled from the mud, is a new exhibit being catalogued for the very first time. The mystery of the deep sea is no longer just about what we might find. It is about whether we will choose to look with care, to protect this last great archive of our planet's hidden past before the lights go out on stories we have not yet even begun to read. From sonar phantoms to sunken forests, the past 25 mysteries are a testament to the ocean's endless capacity for wonder. We have walked the grid of streets in a 5,000-year-old city, turned the gears of a 2,000-year-old computer, and stood before the silent stones of a civilization that vanished into myth. We have seen coins that should not exist, ships that carried empires, and landscapes that were once home to mammoths and our own ancestors. Each discovery, whether confirmed or contested, is a single point of light in a vast, dark sea, and together they form a constellation of questions that guide us toward a new understanding of our own story. The ocean floor is not merely a graveyard for lost things. It is the last great frontier on our own planet, a library where the books are written in silt and stone, waiting for us to learn how to read them. It holds the power to rewrite chapters we thought were finished and to spark imaginations we did not know we had. This journey is just one dive into an abyss that is infinitely deep. Thank you for descending into these mysteries with me. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 25 ancient enigmas captured your imagination the most? Was it the impossible geometry of Yonaguni, the ghostly sonar city off Cuba, or the intimate tragedy of the Vasa? Share your favorite in the comments below, and if you know of a deep-sea mystery we might have missed, tell the world about it. The search is never over. If you want to join the next adventure into the unknown, be sure to subscribe, because the sea is endless and its stories have only just begun to surface.